Hello viewers, thank you for joining me. And this time around, thank you for your patience as well. I've had a very busy summer. I could feel my hold on my anime schedule slowly slipping away, and I knew it would catch up to me eventually. I still feel bad about the delay though, but I've taken a month to reset, and I'm excited to get back into the swing of things, and this was a great series to get me back on track. Scrapped Princess takes place in the fictional kingdom of Leinwan, set in a more primitive time. It's a fairly simple society, ruled over by a typical olden-day monarchy, but you don't have to spend much time in this world to learn that the royal family doesn't have half as much power or influence as the kingdom's one approved religion does. The Church of Mauser is the last word on right and wrong in this kingdom, and anyone who dares to oppose or contradict them, or even just practice another religion, is swiftly tracked down and executed. So the general public's fear of defying the church is understandable, but so is their faith. In all of history, the prophecies that come out of the holy city of Grendel have only been wrong less than a handful of times. From the outside, betting on the church just seems like common sense. But our story, of course, follows one of the anomalies. It was prophesied that the queen would give birth to a daughter who would manifest a power that would destroy the world on her 16th birthday. The king's as superstitious as they come, so he ordered the princess to be murdered as an infant, but the queen was able to save her daughter, sneaking her away to be raised by an ordinary peasant family. They gave her the name Pacifica, a prayer of sorts that she might be able to live a peaceful life after all. But it wasn't to be. She did get to have a normal, happy childhood, but a few months before her 16th birthday, the king is informed by his religious advisors that the so-called scrapped princess survived. So the orders go out throughout the kingdom that she must be tracked down and disposed of at all costs. It's literally a matter of the world ending if they don't find her. Her adoptive parents are killed trying to protect her, and our story opens with Pacifica on the run with her two older siblings. Despite coming from an ordinary country family, Shannon is a master swordsman, the likes of which even the most elite royal soldiers struggle to keep up with. Pacifica's brother and sister mirror each other in a subtle way I really liked. Because Shannon is straightforward to the point where he can come across as a little callous or uncaring, but he's more emotional than he lets on. Seeing people suffer unnecessarily, young kids especially, tends to get under his skin. More than once you'll see emotional turmoil affect his ability to fight. On the other hand, Raquel is an equally masterful magician, but though she seems like the sweeter, softer one on the outside, she's much less likely to hesitate when it comes to making the hard decisions in battle. Raquel really grew on me over time. I love characters with her type of demeanor, because she is a really caring older sister, and sometimes that care shows itself in the way she's liable to burn you alive with a smile on her face if you threaten her younger siblings. Pacifica herself has grown up to be easygoing and cheerful for the most part, the type who makes friends everywhere she goes, which you can bet will be important over the course of their journey. But she's never naive about the danger they're all in. One of the first things that struck a chord with me, during the very first episode, was how quickly the mood could change in this show. How fast the Kasul siblings' lighthearted bickering morphed into that first fight scene as they're attacked by that day's round of bounty hunters. The first fight we see stood out right away because it's not particularly exciting or energetic the way you might expect. It's distinctly somber, Shannon and Raquel easily overpowering their attackers, but making a point not to deal any killing blows. Pacifica watching on with more sadness than fear. I think there are a few ways they could have presented a story with this premise, and I really liked that they chose to introduce the moral dilemma here right from the start, because her two protectors are questioned about it multiple times, and Shannon and Raquel are both pretty logical people. I'm sure that normally they'd agree that the life of a single girl wouldn't be worth the potential destruction of the entire world. But that's in a scenario where the girl in question isn't their little sister. It muddies the water a bit when it's someone you love, especially when she has yet to even do anything wrong. Pacifica has never shown any sign of this great power she's supposedly housing, and even if she had, she has no desire to destroy the world. Even so, she feels the weight of this prophecy every time she sees her siblings go into battle to protect her, and early on she asks them to be the ones to kill her if things change, and there's ever any doubt that she might be a danger to the world after all. And initially they agree, but the whole equation becomes a lot more complicated as their attackers go from bandits and bounty hunters to elite groups of the kingdom's strongest soldiers, to finally the peacemakers themselves, mysterious beings that the church views as agents of God. The Kasul siblings only had a vague knowledge of the prophecy at the start of the series. As they start to learn more about it, and uncover more and more secrets about their world, the question becomes less about the worth of the life of one innocent girl, and more about whether maybe the world as it is should be destroyed. It quickly becomes apparent that the peacemakers themselves, these supposed agents of God who rule over their world and are tasked with keeping everything running smoothly, clearly don't care about humanity nearly as much as the Kasuls are being asked to. Pretty soon, it's impossible to ignore that the greatest threat to the world may just be the ones responsible for overseeing it. There was a lot to love about this show right from the start. Just the initial premise of Pacifica's two adoptive siblings being willing to defy fate to try and save her. I love those types of friendship and family stories, and I never pass up a good tale of fighting back against corrupt rulers. And there were some things I could only appreciate as the story unfolded over time. A lot happens over the course of these 24 episodes, but it never felt rushed. On the contrary, Scrapped Princess had a pretty laid-back pace most of the time. They're on the run, but they're still pretty anonymous, and take their time in each town. It does one of my absolute favorite things, where all the minor characters they meet on all the mini-adventures throughout come back for the final act, really emphasizing how no time throughout this series was wasted. They even do that thing near the end where the siblings get separated and Pacifica winds up with amnesia for quite a few weeks, during which she lives a pretty ordinary, peaceful life in the capital city. I've seen quite a few 11th hour amnesia plotlines, and some of them do feel like they literally just needed to pass some time before the final conflict. But this one really worked, because Pacifica talked a lot about how she dreamed of having an ordinary, peaceful life. There was something so bittersweet but satisfying about seeing her get to live that life, even knowing, as the audience, that it couldn't last. So all around, the storytelling in this one was really solid. I'm going to do something I usually don't. Generally, when I include spoilers, I try to save them for the end. In this show's case, I'm going to put a time for you to skip ahead to if you don't want to be spoiled, because it's a pretty big reveal, but that's not the point I want to end this review on. For those of you who are still here, the spoilers start now. This series takes place in a world modeled on the Middle Ages. Modeled on the Middle Ages in universe, as we come to find out. As our heroes continue their travels, they come across areas that baffle them, but which should be pretty clear to the viewers as the ruins of a modern-day city, which immediately raises some questions about the world. Ultimately, they come to find out that humanity nearly died out 5,000 years ago. The divine event they understand to be the start of civilization was actually a war with an alien species. The god they know as Mauser was a human who betrayed her people in order to save them. They were hopelessly outmatched by their enemies, and clearly willing to fight to extinction rather than ever surrender, but the aliens didn't want to wipe them out completely. So they go the simulated world route, blocking off a small section of the planet and imprisoning the rest of humanity there, for their own protection. The peacemakers are the system's administrators, and the power that makes Pacifica so dangerous is that she's immune to their commands and can spread that immunity to others. A virus, one of the last human soldiers implanted into the system so that his people could break free of their cage one day. Which changes up the moral dilemma considerably, but that's not what I want to talk about here. One of those later things that I only came to appreciate over time was how well they designed the magic system. It's never actually explained in all that much detail, but there's two types of magic. They meet a character who was born with the ability to see short stretches into the future. This power led to her being hunted down by the church as well. That was strange to me at the time, because we'd already seen some of the priests using magic, but it makes a lot of sense once the true nature of this world is explained. Inexplicable, ingrained abilities like Elphatine's clairvoyance are basically bugs in the system. On the other hand, the spells Raquel uses are performed by calling out incantations, or inputting commands into the system. The magic system in this series was one of those things that got 1,000 times cooler to me once the mystery of the world was explored, and I knew I couldn't make this review without giving it some sort of shout-out. I love that sensation of the puzzle pieces all fitting together. Likewise, the writers really understood the assignment in terms of their characters' worldview. It takes our trio a long time to really grasp what they're being told about their world, and that's how it should be, even once the more modern audience is likely to start getting a little impatient with hearing it rehashed in a slightly different way for the dozenth time. Because these three grew up in an era where advanced technology would have been viewed no differently from divine intervention, or the type of magic that would get you hunted down for being a witch. And it also made a lot of sense that Raquel was the first to start to get it, as she already had experience with interacting with the system that controls their world, even if she didn't really understand the truth behind her spells at the time. This series requires a bit of patience, because they don't explain everything right away. The mysteries unfold gradually over time, so a lot of the elements I thought I'd be criticizing in the beginning, like the magic system, are things I have no complaints about now, which has led to me spending a lot of time wondering how such a good show has flown so under the radar, but I did find a starting point for the answer to that question. There were times that Scrapped Princess reminded me quite a bit of Code Geass. There's the driving force of the story being a desire to protect a beloved younger sister, even if it means destroying the rest of the world, for starters. And then, in episode 6, they go head-to-head with a peacemaker for the first time, and it's not going well. Shannon basically sends out a prayer to the universe, begging for the power to keep his sister safe, even if he has to make a deal with the devil or fight God to get it. The mysterious being who answers his plea and lends him her power comes in the form of a fairly emotionless young girl named Zephyrus, who was pretty reminiscent of C2 to me. I'm not trying to suggest that one felt like a knockoff of the other. There's a lot that's unique to each of them, but Scrapped Princess does predate Code Geass by 3 or 4 years, and it was interesting to me to think that a show that got so wildly popular might just have been influenced in some ways by this lesser-known one. And of course, the real question at hand was what made one a hidden gem and the other insanely popular and successful. And the one big difference I noticed was the drama. What's at stake in Scrapped Princess from the very beginning is either the end of the world or the deaths of our 3 main protagonists. When the stakes are that high, I'm generally inclined to describe a story as dramatic, but as I said before, the tone of this show was often pretty laid back. It was a very pensive show a lot of the time. There was a lot of focus on right and wrong, and each of the characters' internal journeys to justify seemingly being on the wrong side. None of them had Lelouch's theater kid flair or arrogance. For Shannon and Raquel, they seemed to view their part in ending the world as a necessary evil, and quietly accepted whatever that might mean for them. The siblings' interactions are often so ordinary that they can seem a little reserved at times, and I think there was a softness to those moments. The way that, no matter how much danger they faced that day, once they set up camp for the night, it was a little bit like being back home. Their love for each other is unmistakably there, and it's fierce, but I did find myself wishing they were a little more expressive sometimes. But the lack of dramatics was something I felt a lot more keenly during the later fight scenes. Most of the Peacemaker's deaths are so blink and you miss it, done with absolutely no fanfare, that I had to rewind a few times to clarify that they actually happened. And it's not that I necessarily wanted the fights to be super drawn out just for the sake of drama. I mean, I think a little carrying on is called for when your enemy is the big boss of the series, but the way you craft a fight scene can have bigger implications for your story. It sends a certain kind of message when a villain is wiped out too quickly, and I really don't think that was the message they were trying to send. That was the one thing that bothered me about how anticlimactic some of the battles ended up being. I was pretty disappointed with the inclusion of the prince as well. I'm not sure I've ever seen a story do less with a surprise twin reveal than Scrapped Princess does, because Prince Forsyth mostly exists just to sit around the castle looking sad about the state of his family and wondering about the sister he never got to meet. He gets to make one big decision near the end, but it comes across feeling like he's just being used by someone else. And considering how pathetic his father was shown to be, I'd really been hoping he'd get some kind of character arc that would leave me confident that he'd be a better king one day. As is, he's one of the more lackluster parts of this series. But even that short section of complaints was longer than I thought it would be. The point I meant to make was that I can see why a flashier show like Code Geass might have appealed to the masses more, but this was a series that definitely deserves to be remembered. It wasn't a show where I focused much on its shortcomings while I was watching it. I was too caught up in how creative it felt and how perfectly the story was being pieced together. I actually really love its pacing. The way the mystery unfolds on its own schedule, and the significance of other characters and plot points falling into place as it does. Not to mention how much I love a show with complicated moral discussions. I wouldn't say I normally have any particular bias towards older shows, but I did find myself getting nostalgic for that early 2000s era while I was watching this one. A time where half as many shows came out each season, but twice the amount of effort was put into what we did get. But let's focus on the positive. Sometimes there's nothing better than finding a series that's flown under the radar just when you think you've already seen everything worth watching. If you're not familiar with Scrapped Princess, I definitely recommend taking the time to check it out. It's one of those shows I kind of can't believe didn't leave more of a mark on anime history in the fanbase's memory, but I'd love to see it make some sort of miraculous comeback now. Thank you for watching.